Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 43 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4. We are in the 20th chapter at the moment, just a sec, which is titled Lord Vishnu's Appearance in the Sacrificial Arena of Maharaj Prithu. And we're continuing today from verse 16. So now, though, let us please recite our prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachade Shatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasa Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyas cha kripas sindubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Right, so here we go, devotees. Verse 16, the verse and the purport. My dear King, I'm very captivated by your elevated qualities and excellent behavior, and thus I'm very favorably inclined toward you. You may therefore ask from me any benediction you like. One who does not possess elevated qualities and behavior cannot possibly achieve my favor simply by performance of sacrifices, severe austerities, or mystic yoga. But I always remain equipoised in the heart of one who is also equipoised in all circumstances. Right, let's go into the purport here. So, well, as we read, Lord Vishnu is pleased with Maharaj Prithu, and he's giving benediction. Well, he's offering a benediction. Yes, so he's not pleased by sacrifices, austerities, mystic yoga. He is pleased by elevated character, very nice behavior. But these things can't be there. The elevated character and very pure, like very sattvic, just very good behavior. These things cannot be there unless pure devotional service is there. Otherwise, it's just inevitable. Some important, serious shortcomings are going to be there. Whereas anyone who becomes a pure devotee, just naturally all good qualities develop in them, even without any extraneous or extra effort, just by being a devotee properly as spirit soul. And spirit soul, part and parcel of the Lord, naturally has all good qualities. So, of course, when the soul is materially contaminated, then the soul may be good or bad in material terms. But when one is transcendental to material qualities, all good qualities come out. So there are 26 such qualities. Let me just read through them. Prabhupada actually lists them in the purport. But anyway, let's just read through them. Kind to everyone, does not quarrel with anyone, fixed in the absolute truth, equal to everyone, faultless, charitable, mild, clean, simple, benevolent, peaceful, completely attached to Krishna, has no material hankering, meek, steady, self-controlled, does not eat more than required, sane, respectful, humble, grave, compassionate, friendly, poetic, expert, and silent. So the Lord, Prabhupada points out, the Lord is satisfied by the development of these qualities, and not by some artificial performance of sacrifices, yoga, and whatnot. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, in other words, unless one is fully qualified to become a pure devotee of the Lord, one cannot expect to be liberated from material entanglement. That's the end of the first section. Next is the second section, verse 17 and verse 18, just two verses. And we've titled it, Prithu Maharaj accepts the Lord's instructions and is approached by repentant Indra. I think we'll read the two verses and then go over them with their purports. So, verse 17, the great Saint Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, in this way Maharaj Prithu, the conqueror of the entire world, accepted the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead on his head. 18. As King Indra was standing by, he became ashamed of his own activities and fell down before King Prithu to touch his lotus feet. But Prithu Maharaj immediately embraced him in great ecstasy and gave up all envy against him for his having stolen the horse meant for the sacrifice. Right, so let's go back over verse 17 and its purport. The great saint Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, in this way Maharaj Prithu, the conqueror of the entire world, accepted the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead on his head. So Srila Prabhupada says that we should also accept the instructions of the Lord in the same way, wholeheartedly, by bowing down at his lotus feet. And that means that whatever he says should be taken as it is, with great care, attention, and respect. It's not our business to amend his words, to add or to change, as many so-called scholars and so-called swamis do with Bhagavad Gita. So here Prithu Maharaj is showing a very nice example, which we can all learn from, how to accept the Lord's instructions. And this is how to receive knowledge through parampara. Without challenging, without arguing, without thinking I have a better idea, but just be open-hearted to accept and bow down in all humility. Verse 18, as King Indra was standing by, he became ashamed of his own activities and fell down before King Prithu to touch his lotus feet. But Prithu Maharaj immediately embraced him in great ecstasy and gave up all envy against him for his having stolen the horse meant for the sacrifice. And here also there's a purport. So there are many cases of offenders against Vaishnavas becoming repentant later. There's many examples, like Chapal Gopal, against Haridas Thakur. Anyway, there's a number if we go through Shastra. Yes. Here we see that Indra was so powerful, he's accompanying Lord Vishnu. I mean, he's so important. He's part of the team with Lord Vishnu. But he feels himself a great offender for stealing the sacrificial horse. Another example of an offender becoming repentant is Devasa Muni in the 9th canto, offending Maharaj Ambarish. And there's others, there's quite a few actually, if we really get into it. So, but the thing is, a very important thing, Prabhupada brings it out right here, that an offender at the lotus feet of a Vaishnav is never excused by the Lord. And there are many instances which illustrate that. And actually Prabhupada gives the example of Devasa Muni with Ambarish. That Devasa approached the Lord initially in the 4th chapter of the 9th canto and appealed to the Lord, please forgive me and please give me mercy because I'm distressed, I'm in danger, please help me. And the Lord said, sorry, I can't. You've offended a Vaishnav, and therefore there's nothing I can do to help you unless the Vaishnav forgives you. So please, you go back to the Vaishnav right now and then beg forgiveness. And then if he gives it, then you'll be completely forgiven all round. So therefore, in this case here, Indra decided to do that. So therefore he threw himself at the lotus feet of Maharaj Prithu. But Maharaj Prithu was such a magnanimous Vaishnav that he didn't want Indra to fall at his feet. He tried to pick him up. He picked him up, he embraced him, and then they both forgot the past. And Prabhupada makes interesting and important point that actually both of them were envious of each other and angry, but both were Vaishnavas, and it was their duty to, quote unquote, adjust the cause of their envy. So Prabhupada says this is a first-class example of cooperative behavior between Vaishnavas. So now, because people are not devotees, they fight perpetually. Look at the world situation. They fight perpetually and are vanquished. They cannot finish the mission of human life. They battle to make any progress whatsoever in the mission of life. So therefore, Prabhupada says there's a great need to spread the Krishna consciousness movement so that even though people become angry and malicious towards each other because of being Krishna conscious, their rivalry, their envy, etc., can be adjusted without difficulty. Section 3, Prithu Maharaj offers prayers to Lord Vishnu. And this section goes from verse 19 to verse 31. So let's read through the verses. 19. King Prithu abundantly worshipped the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was so merciful to him. While worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, Prithu Maharaj gradually increased his ecstasy in devotional service. 20. The Lord was just about to leave, but because he was so greatly inclined toward the behavior of King Prithu, he did not depart. Seeing the behavior of Maharaj Prithu with his lotus eyes, he was detained because he is always the well-wisher of his devotee. 21. The original king, Maharaj Prithu, his eyes full of tears and his voice faltering and choked up, could neither see the Lord very distinctly nor speak to address the Lord in any way. He simply embraced the Lord within his heart and remained standing in that way with folded hands. 22. Supreme Personality of Godhead stood with his lotus feet almost touching the ground, while he rested the front of his hand on the raised shoulder of Garuda, the enemy of the snakes. Maharaj Prithu, wiping the tears from his eyes, tried to look upon the Lord, but it appeared that the king was not fully satisfied by looking at him. Thus the king offered the following prayers. Verse 23. My dear Lord, you are the best of the demigods who can offer benedictions. Why therefore should any learned person ask you for benedictions meant for living entities bewildered by the modes of nature? Such benedictions are available automatically, even in the lives of living entities suffering in hellish conditions. My dear Lord, you can certainly bestow merging into your existence, but I do not wish to have such a benediction. 24. My dear Lord, I therefore do not wish to have the benediction of merging into your existence, a benediction in which there's no existence of the nectarian beverage of your lotus feet. I want the benediction of at least 1 million ears, for thus I may be able to hear about the glories of your lotus feet from the mouths of your pure devotees. That's amazing, isn't it? Just wonderful. Verse 25. My dear Lord, you are glorified by the selected verses uttered by great personalities. Such glorification of your lotus feet is just like saffron particles. When the transcendental vibration from the mouths of great devotees carries the aroma of the saffron dust of your lotus feet, the forgetful living entity gradually remembers his eternal relationship with you. Devotees thus gradually come to the right conclusion about the value of life. My dear Lord, I therefore do not need any other benediction but the opportunity to hear from the mouth of your pure devotee. 26. My dear highly glorified Lord, if one, in the association of pure devotees, hears even once the glories of your activities, he does not, unless he is nothing but an animal, give up the association of devotees. For no intelligent person would be so careless as to leave their association. The perfection of chanting and hearing about your glories was accepted even by the goddess of fortune, who desired to hear of your unlimited activities and transcendental glories. Verse 27. Now I wish to engage in the service of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to serve just like the goddess of fortune, who carries a lotus flower in her hand, because his lordship, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the reservoir of all transcendental qualities. I'm afraid that the goddess of fortune and I would quarrel, because both of us would be attentively engaged in the same service. 28. My dear Lord of the universe, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, is the mother of the universe, and yet I think she may be angry with me because of my intruding upon her service and acting on that very platform to which she is so much attached. Yet, I am hopeful that even though there's some misunderstanding, you will take my part, for you are very much inclined to the poor, and you always magnify even insignificant service unto you. Therefore, even though she becomes angry, I think that there's no harm for you, because you are so self-sufficient that you can do without her. Okay, 29. Great saintly persons who are always liberated, take to your devotional service, because only by devotional service can one be relieved from the illusions of material existence. Oh, my Lord, there's no reason for the liberated souls to take shelter at your lotus feet, except that such souls are constantly thinking of your feet. Verse 30. My dear Lord, what you have said to your unalloyed devotee is certainly very much bewildering. The allurements you offer in the Vedas are certainly not suitable for pure devotees. People in general, bound by the sweet words of the Vedas, engage themselves again and again in fruitive activities, enamored by the results of their actions. 31. My Lord, due to your illusory energy, all living beings in this material world have forgotten their real constitutional position, and out of ignorance they're always desirous of material happiness in the form of society, friendship, and love. Therefore, please do not ask me to take some material benefits from you, but as a father, not waiting for the son's demand, does everything for the benefit of the son. Please bestow upon me whatever you think best for me. So, this is the third section. Prithu Maharaj offers prayers to Lord Vishnu, verse 19 to verse 31. Verse 19, King Prithu abundantly worshipped the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was so merciful to him. While worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, Prithu Maharaj gradually increased his ecstasy in devotional service. Okay, there is a short-ish purport here. First point Prabhupada makes is that when ecstatic symptoms appear in a devotee's body, it's understood his devotional service is perfect. They're called Ashta Sattvika Bhavas, which means 8 kinds of transcendental transformations. For example, here we have just 5 of the 8 listed out: crying, laughing, perspiring, falling down, crying like a madman. So these are never to be imitated, but they naturally appear when perfection comes. So the Lord is Bhaktavatsala. He's inclined towards his pure devotee. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, therefore the transcendental ecstatic transaction between the Supreme Lord and his devotee is never like the activities of this material world. Verse 20, the Lord was just about to leave, but because he was so greatly inclined toward the behavior of King Prithu, he did not depart. Seeing the behavior of Maharaj Prithu with his lotus eyes, he was detained, because he's always the well-wisher of his devotees. Right, let's look at the purport here. Prabhupada says that the words in the verse, Surit Satam, are significant. The Lord is always inclined towards the devotee. The Lord always thinks of the devotee's well-being. And this is not partiality. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 verse 29, there the Lord explains he's equal to everyone, but one who engages in his devotional service, the Lord is especially inclined towards. Then in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 9th canto, the Lord says the devotee's always in his heart. And he's in the devotee's heart. That's 9th canto, chapter 4, verse 68. That's just an amazingly classic verse. So then, second paragraph, Prabhupada explains that this special inclination of the Supreme Lord for his pure devotee is not unnatural and it's not partiality. And Prabhupada gives the example of a father who may have several children, but he has a special affection for one who's very inclined towards him, who takes shelter of him, and who's very, affectionate and very willing to do what the Father wants, like this. Yes. So the Lord also has a similar mood, or the same mood. Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita chapter 10 verse 10 to clarify that. Tesham sadati yuktanam bhajatam priti puravikam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamu piyanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So then there's a third paragraph basically just following after that Bhagavad Gita verse, chapter 10, verse 10. Prabhupada makes the point that those who constantly engage in devotional service to the Lord in love and affection, they're directly in contact with him, within the heart. The Lord is not far away from the devotee. Actually, he's in everyone's heart, but only the devotee can realize his presence and thus be directly connected and take and get instructions from the Lord constantly. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, therefore there's no chance of a devotee's being in error, nor is there any partiality on the part of the Lord for his pure devotees. Right, verse 21, the original king Maharaj Prithu, his eyes full of tears and his voice faltering and choked up, could neither see the Lord very distinctly, nor speak to address the Lord in any way. He simply embraced the Lord within his heart and remained standing in that way with folded hands. It's so beautiful. So, okay, let's have a look at the purport. So as Krishna is addressed in Brahma Samhita as Adi Purusha, the original person, so Prithu, as an incarnation, is referred to here as Adi Raja, the original king, original and or ideal. Yes, so Prithu was a great devotee, great hero, conquered all undesirable elements in the kingdom. He was so powerful, he was equal to Indra, and he gave protection to the citizens, keeping them engaged in devotional service and other pious activities. Didn't take any money from them without being able to give them protection from all calamities. So the greatest calamity, of course, in life is to become godless, and as a result of that become sinful. if the king or the head of the government allows citizens to become like that, then the head of the state is responsible and has to take reactions because he's levying taxes unnecessarily. So Prabhupada explains this is how ruling works, and Prithu did it all nicely. He's referred to here as Adi Raj. Even a responsible king like Maharaj Prithu can become a pure devotee of the first order. We can distinctly see from King Prithu's behavior how he became ecstatic, both externally and internally, in pure devotional service. Okay, next paragraph, fairly substantial. Prabhupada explains how he saw that day, the day he did this purport, in newspaper report in Bombay, that the government is going to allow liquor in Bombay again. Up till that time, what was it, 62? Then, since Gandhi's time, Bombay was kept dry, no alcohol. But unfortunately, the citizens, generally it's a practice, in many ways at least, how to become expert in dodging the laws. So the government, in the papers, the report was, the government thinks it's best to allow the drinking, but to tax them. Yeah. And then if they do like that, Prabhupada says, then the government will sell at lower prices. They'll sell at lower prices than the illegal people selling. It's amazing. Prabhupada says that they were not selling their illegal liquor publicly in shops, but liquor was being sold in public lavatories, in public toilets, and other unusual places. So Prabhupada makes the point, and it is such an extremely important point, that it shows the government was unable to change the hearts of the people. The people remained addicted to sense gratification, and in this case, this very low-class form of sense gratification of drinking liquor. So Prabhupada goes on into the fourth paragraph, that this kind of government can't stop the reactions of sinful life, like war, famine, etc. That as soon as there are discrepancies in following the laws of the Lord, then punishment will be there in the forms of war, famine, like great disease, outbreaks of disease like COVID. And there had been a war for 14 days between Pakistan and India. Right at the time Prabhupada did this purport we're going through. So Prabhupada now explains here in the same purport that there was a 14-day war which caused so much death and destruction. And what is it? It's reactions to sinful activities. But the Krishna consciousness movement will actually make people pure. And then you won't have to have some sort of funny system of selling liquor. No, you won't have to do that. If everyone becomes a devotee, then their lust, their greed, their attractions to degraded activities will be reduced. So how to do that, Prabhupada says here? By broadcasting the message of the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada mentions how big businesses, they contribute to defense funds, which burns the money, literally burns it, in the form of gunpowder, explosives, but still they're reluctant to take to Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, under the circumstances, the world will periodically suffer from such upsurges and outbreaks of war, which are the consequences of not being Krishna conscious. Verse 22. The Supreme Personality of Godhead stood with his lotus feet almost touching the ground, while he rested the front of his hand on the raised shoulder of Garuda, the enemy of the snakes. Maharaj Prithu, wiping the tears from his eyes, tried to look upon the Lord, but it appeared that the king was not fully satisfied by looking at him. Thus the king offered the following prayers. So you may remember, this is in Nectar of Devotion. There's a very similar type of situation with Srimati Radharani, that she was looking at the Lord, but she started crying, and then she couldn't see him because the tears were so profuse that they were blocking her vision. So therefore she prayed to the Lord, in my next life, please let me be a fish in the Yamuna, because fish never blink. So when you come by, I'll be able to just look at you uninterruptedly. Right. It's also mentioned about the Lord's chariot driver. What's his name? Anyway, the Lord's chariot driver, I forget his name offhand. He was trying to fan the Lord, but there were so many tears coming from his eyes he couldn't see the Lord. And so he's fanning, but he couldn't see that the Lord had now moved a little away, and he's sort of fanning nothing. And Prabhupada says, he very strongly chastised his ecstasy. Yeah. Daruka, of course. Sorry about that. Let's get back to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So now Maharaj Prithu offers prayers. But Prabhupada makes, the first point Prabhupada makes in the purport is that in this verse, it's stated that the Lord is standing above the ground. He's not standing on the ground. And Prabhupada explains that the residents of the higher planets, from Brahmaloka down to Swarga Loka, which is also known as Indraloka, the people are so advanced that when they come here to any lower type of place, they become weightless, and they can all stand without touching the ground. Yes, very interesting. So anyway, Prabhupada makes the point that Lord Vishnu is the Lord, but because he lives in this universe, he sometimes plays as one of the demigods. So when he first appeared before Prithu, he was not touching the ground, but when he was pleased with him, he acted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead from Vaikuntha, and out of affection for the Lord, for Prithu Maharaj, he touched the earth, but he kept resting the front of his hand on the shoulder of Garuda, as if to avoid falling, because the Lord was not used to standing on the earth. So these are symptoms of his great affection for King Prithu. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, perceiving his fortunate position, Prithu Maharaj could not fully look upon the Lord due to ecstasy. But still in a faltering voice, he began to offer prayers. Verse 23. My dear Lord, you are the best of the demigods who can offer benedictions. Why therefore should any learned person ask you for benedictions meant for living entities bewildered by the modes of nature? Such benedictions are available automatically, even in the lives of living beings suffering in hellish conditions. My dear Lord, you can certainly bestow merging into your existence, but I do not wish to have such a benediction. Okay, so let us go through the purport here. Prabhupada, first of all, makes the point that there are different kinds of benedictions, depending on what people want. For karmis, the best benediction is to be allowed to go to the higher planetary systems, where they can live a long time in higher grades of material bodies and have higher standards of material happiness, and so on, living standards. Then there are others, particularly jnanis and yogis, who want the benediction of merging, particularly the jnanis at least. The yogis, of course, generally they want mystical powers, forgetting material benefits. So, but anyway, for those, particularly the jnanis who want to merge, this is called Kaivalya, and the Lord, because he may give them that. The Lord is therefore addressed as Kaivalya Pati, the Lord of Kaivalya, or the Lord of impersonal liberation. But of course, devotees don't want theirs. For them, Kaivalya is as good as hell. Yeah. So Prithu Maharaj says, not interested in what karmis, jnanis, and yogis want. And Prabhupada refers to the famous words of Prabodhananda Saraswati in this regard. Kaivalya Narakayate means that this impersonal liberation is no better than hell, and Tridas Pur Akash Pushpayate. And as for the delights of the heavenly planets, they are will-o'-the-wisp or phantasmagoria, like hallucination, and they're not wanted by the devotees. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, devotees do not even care for the positions held by Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva, nor does a devotee desire to become equal with Lord Vishnu. As a pure devotee of the Lord, Prithu Maharaj made his position very clear. Verse 24. My dear Lord, I therefore do not wish to have the benediction of merging into your existence, a benediction in which there's no existence of the nectarian beverage of your lotus feet. I want the benediction of at least 1 million ears, for thus I may be able to hear about the glories of your lotus feet from the mouths of your pure devotees. And this is just such a wonderful blessing he's asking for. In the previous verse, Prithu addressed the Lord as Kaivalya Pati, the Lord of liberation, but it doesn't mean that's what he wanted. What he wanted, he makes clear here. He wants 1 million ears to just hear about the Lord in so many ways from pure devotees. Yeah. From pure devotees who speak from the cause of their hearts. And it's interesting to note in Srimad Bhagavatam, right at the beginning, 113, it says the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam It's just nectar anyway, but when it comes from the lips of the devotees, then it's even better. In the case of the Bhagavatam, the nectar of the Bhagavatam increased when it came from the mouth of Shukadev Goswami. So someone might think you can hear from anyone, devotees or non-devotees, but here it's stated very clearly, must be devotees. Yes. And, it's also a fact, it's a very interesting point, is that you do get non-devotees who are very experienced. They're like professional public speakers. They can just talk about things and make practically anything sound wonderful. And because there's so much interest in the Bhagavatam, and people give money to people who recite the Bhagavatam nicely, so these expert public speakers, sometimes they speak on the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada says, very ornamentally, but the devotees don't want to hear from them because it's just material sound vibration. But when it's heard from the mouth of a pure devotee, it's immediately effective. Second paragraph, Prabhupada quotes or refers to Bhagavatam 3:25-25, Satam Prasangam Mama Virya Samvida, which is a very famous verse, and which means that glorification of the Lord is potent when it comes from the mouth of a pure devotee. And interesting point, the Lord has so many devotees, innumerable, all over. They've been glorifying him since time immemorial, but they can't finish reciting his glories, and they will not. So therefore Prithu Maharaj wants unlimited ears. As Srila Rupa Goswami, you may remember, wanted millions of ears and tongues to hear and then chant. So in other words, if our ears are always engaged in hearing the glorification of the Lord, there's no scope for hearing any nonsense like something from the Mayavadis or just, if you hear from Mayavadis, that is spiritual doom for you. Lord Chaitanya confirmed that even if it's Vedic, even if it's the Bhagavatam, we'll be doomed. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, by hearing such Mayavad philosophy, one cannot come to the destination of spiritual perfection of life. Verse 25. My dear Lord, you are glorified by the selected verses uttered by great personalities. Such glorification of your lotus feet is just like saffron particles. When the transcendental vibration from the mouths of great devotees carries the aroma of the saffron dust of your lotus feet, the forgetful living entity gradually remembers his eternal relationship with you. Devotees thus gradually come to the right conclusion about the value of life. My dear Lord, I therefore do not need any other benediction but the opportunity to hear from the mouth of your pure devotee. So the previous verse said that we have to hear the glorification of the Lord from the mouth of a pure devotee. And this is further explained here. And that vibration is so powerful, it can reawaken our forgotten Krishna consciousness, our forgotten relationship with the Lord. And because we've been absorbed in material life, we have almost forgotten our eternal relationship with him. Prabhupada says, like a man sleeping forgets his duties. So the Vedas say we're sleeping under Maya. So we have to get up and engage properly. and in this way utilize the facility of the human form of life. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, Jeev Jago, Gora Chandra Bole. Wake up and engage in devotional service, sleeping souls, so the mission of human form of life can be fulfilled. So this awakening voice, Jeev Jago, wake up, engage in devotional service. This voice which wakes people up, it comes from the pure devotee. Second paragraph. So, pure devotees always engage in devotional service to the Lord, taking shelter of him. Therefore, he has direct connection with the saffron mercy particles, which are all over the lotus feet of the Lord. So, even though when a pure devotee speaks, it may sound like material sound, but still it's so spiritually powerful that it touches the saffron dust on the lotus feet of the Lord. And as soon as the sleeping soul hears this, he immediately remembers his eternal relationship with the Lord. Although, until then, maybe he had forgotten everything about these things. So, third paragraph. So, therefore, obviously, it's very important for the conditioned soul to hear from the mouth of a pure devotee or pure devotees who are fully surrendered to the lotus feet of the Lord, have no material desires, no mental speculation, and no contamination of the modes. So we are all, it can be said that Prabhupada says every one of us is ku-yogi, because we have engaged in the service of this material world, forgetting our relationship with the Lord as his servants. So we have to rise from the ku-yogi platform to the su-yogi platform. We have to become perfect mystics. So hearing from the pure devotee, it's recommended in all the Vedic Shastras, especially by Lord Chaitanya. And you can stay in your position if you want to get this mercy, get this nectar. You can stay in your position, whatever that may be. But then if you hear from the pure devotee, gradually you'll come to understand your relationship with the Lord, and then you'll engage in the Lord's devotional service. Your life will become perfect. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, therefore, this process of hearing from the mouth of a pure devotee is very important for making progress in the line of spiritual understanding. So, devotees, there you go. We'll carry on tomorrow, finish the rest of this chapter. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.